All right, welcome back to another PCBH Corner. I'm super excited to be joined by a colleague of mine, Sarah Ortner, who has been a BHC in our system now for
9 years.
9 years.
Yeah.
I'll let Sarah introduce, but I always like telling a fun story about Sarah to begin with. That I remember when Sarah, we've talked about this, when you first applied, Julie Finley, our recruiter at the time, gave us this kind of packet, an email of like, hey, this is someone I think you should apply. We had worked a lot with Julie about kind of identifying what we were looking for, and Julie was like, this is someone you want to meet and discuss. And my mind at that time, and this might be another corner for us to do at another time, was like, well, you know, there isn't this necessarily like this robust PCBH experience.
None, really.
And so I was a little bit hesitant.
Yeah.
And then you absolutely crushed our interview process throughout. So I think it's another reminder of just when we're trying to interview with people, it really is about mission, fit. And one of the things that has inspired me about Sarah throughout is that mission of serving patients, which we're going to talk about a little bit today. But Sarah, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm Sarah Ortner. I'm a marriage and family therapist is my licensure and the background that I come into this program with. And I think, you know, what has really served me from that perspective, a little plug here for my fellow LMFTs, is that systems perspective works so well when you are working in primary care and working with families and doing kind of the contextual interview. So I think that was what was helpful for me in that interview anyway. I've been here for 9 years. I love this work and I love working in this particular organization, in this setting. And a big reason why I think it's a fit for me is because I do have I love working with our patients. I love working with our providers to support them and working with our patients and kind of connecting to the underlying joy of what we could do. So that, I guess that's me, you know?
Gets me hyped. Gets me hyped. So, it literally, my mind is going like so many different ways. Like, well, maybe we should talk about this, but no, we're going to stick to the topic. So, the corner that we're going to talk about today is something that you and Dr. Stedman presented on at this last CFHA. Is this concept of pairing a BHC with the medical provider. Just from the beginning, do you want to kind of give an overview of just what pairing means? What's that look like?
Absolutely. So pairing is when a medical provider, in this case, for the purposes of what I do, it is Dr. Stedman or sometimes Dr. Hampton. A medical provider and a BHC are together for the whole clinic. Here, our clinics are 4 hours. So in the morning clinic, 8 to 12, or in the afternoon clinic, 1 to 5. And the goal of the BHC is to see every single patient that the medical provider sees. And so pairing is really this idea that when a medical provider is in the clinic, they are going to work intensively with the BHC. They're going to partner together to serve every single patient.
I love the word intensively.
Yeah.
So I even have some different questions that I will be going to. But building off of that, can you start about just where did this idea come from? Like why do this? Where did this even originate from?
Absolutely. So in many ways this idea I think organically evolved between Dr. Stedman and I as our work practices. So Dr. Stedman originally was a resident here who I was so fortunate in being able to participate in her training, and then came on as faculty and now has moved on into a leadership position within our organization, as you know. And kind of through this process, she and I just became very close, and we found that our philosophy of care was closely aligned, how we work together. We have, I think, a good working chemistry together. And because of this, and because we were, in our organization, we have pods, and so what that means is sort of like in the clinic, there are sort of smaller kind of geographical subgroups of where you're at. She and I were in the same pod, so we were just already working together pretty closely. I tended to get a lot of her warm handoffs anyway, so I was, tend to see a lot of her patients regularly anyway. We just developed a good connection, and it really came to this idea of like, well, what if this could just be what it was all the time, right? Like, what if I was always working with Dr. Stedman? What if she was always working with me? And as we kind of played out how that might be, and talk through some of that, we really talked through how that we could in the hypothetical, we could really see some benefits for ourselves as providers and for our patients from that, right? There'd be continuity of care for the patients. There would be a team that's pretty consistently involved in the patient's care and so knows the patient very, very well, kind of maybe reducing some of the redundancy of the questions that the patient might be getting, or having some just baseline knowledge of like the trajectory of their course of care, but also of their context, right? And then also for, Dr. Stedman and I, we talked about what it means to have a colleague that you feel a lot of trust in and feel a lot of joy in working with, and having that person be with you throughout your kind of day. How that could also be a revitalizing experience. For myself as a BHC, I really like the idea of the challenge because as we know, our medical providers, they just see more patients, right? By a pretty large margin, right? At our organization, I think let's see, like if you've been here for 3 years, our expectation is you're seeing 4.5 patients per clinic. For the medical providers, their expectation is like 8 or 9 patients per clinic. And I really wanted to know if I could, some of this was proof of concept, but also just like, could I personally provide good care, quality care to that many patients, and what would that look like? And so I really wanted to see if I could do that. It was a challenge for myself,
Because can I ask you about this? Because the one thing, and I was going to hold off, but it's another time that comes up. My mind predicts that people watching this, particularly BHCs, like you said, so maybe their productivity is that throughout the day, they're going to see 9 visits a day, 9 to 10 visits a day, which you have always exceeded that even in the non-parent things. But that basically the productivity. This is essentially saying like, hey, we're going to double that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, one of the things that my mind goes to immediately, like, I love how you said it was a challenge to see, but what was that like for you kind of entering into this space where the expectation now is going to be like, we're doubling your productivity and you're already a productive BHC.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so part of it, if I can take a step back, part of why this challenge was meaningful to me is, I think of maybe this will talk a little bit to my theory of like the role of the BHC a little bit, but I think of it, there's almost like 3 lanes to what you're trying to accomplish as a BHC. And so one lane is you're working with the patients and you're working with the community members. And I've been in Yakima for 9 years, so like these are community members, right? These are people that I'll see at like my nephew's, birthday party, or the person who's going to take care of my teeth when I go to the dentist, or whatever it is. Like these are my community members that I'm taking care of, and so I feel very invested in that way. Secondly, I think this way of approaching mental or behavioral health work has the potential to just shift how we look at this work in a very healthy and necessary way. So I kind of see there's this larger context to it as well, or this larger goal. But 3, and I think what's very relevant to this, is that we are embedded in medical systems, and oftentimes are medical systems in distress, and our role is to make these systems stronger and support the medical providers who are at the heart of this medical system, right? This clinic would suffer if all the BHCs left, but it would close if all the medical providers left, right?
Said.
And so
well said.
I really think of the role of the BHC is a partnering role, right? But also it's a supportive role to the medical providers. And so if I look at it from that lens, and I think, well, my colleague here has this expectation, I think it kind of shows some fidelity to my colleague if I can try to match that expectation as well. I know it's a different thing. I'm not prescribing medication. I'm not ordering, I'm not sending referrals or ordering labs or any of those things. It's a different body of work, right? But mine is a different body of work too.
No doubt, no doubt.
So my thought was like, if this is something that is an expectation of my colleague, if I can make that an expectation of me, I'm going to have a more realistic understanding of what my colleague's workload is like, what their day is like, and I'm going to be better able to, from that vantage point, sort of support them. And I'm also going to get more trust too, I think.
Can I ask you this? Because this is something you and I, we've had personal conversations about this, and I think it's a related topic, but then also a bigger topic within the field. There's so much, and not to be corny and blow smoke, there's so much humility in what you just said about what the primary care provider's job is, and just what they're tasked with and wanting to be a part of that. There's just like an inherent humility. What has allowed that humility to be there? Like what has prompted, is that something that you just feel like, again, from a systems perspective, what do you think?
Gosh, I don't know if anybody's asked me that question before. So, but my initial response to that is that I think maybe it is coming from a systems perspective, but I think in any system, a system works better if nobody's a superstar. Right? Like systems aren't really about superstars, but if we are all supporting each other and like maximizing what each other can do, we're just a really strong team. And I think, I'm not suited to be a superstar, but I am suited to be a really good team member. And so I gravitate towards that environment, but also towards that mentality. I think that's my answer.
I love that, Sarah, so much. And I'm going to stop my mind from going down a rabbit hole with that. And I do think that's a pivotal thing. Again, we've talked about this, what makes a good BHC, and that desire of, one, serving the community. And I love the three things that you said about the serving the community, and then obviously trying to shift healthcare in a way that's going to be a more high quality, more contextual, more compassionate way. And then being a part in supporting the medical team, having BHCs that, we laugh about this, but, going in and trying to prove like I'm a superstar. Like,
it doesn't work.
It doesn't work. Right? In a lot of ways.
It doesn't work, right? And it's just, not only does it not work, I don't think it's, we're going off subject, I just don't think it's gratifying.
I agree.
It's just not gratifying.
I agree. I love that.
So I think that's kind of part of where it comes from. It's gratifying to be part of a really good team, and to be part of a really good team, I have to be a really good teammate. And that's just gratifying.
Gets me hyped. So going back to, as you said, the lineage of this, so you talked about how this was really an organic process.
A very organic process, that did develop between Dr. Stedman and I already working pretty closely.
Exactly, yes.
And so we talked about this, we kind of imagined how it might go. Dr. Stedman talked with you about it, got some buy-in about it. And then, we just kind of did it.
You're damn right you did. You're damn right you did, yeah.
And it definitely, there was trial and error involved, right, for both of us. And also at that time we were working with Alicia and just a fantastic MA who was really on board, really believed in the mission of having like integrated care, really thought BHCs added a lot of value, really took a lot of ownership over like the patient's experience and really wanted patients to have a good experience as well. And took a lot of, our MAs can be so protective of their providers, worked really closely with Dr. Stedman. And so we were kind of this triad that were like figuring this out, And I just think that was very magical, for lack of a better word. It was just really magical to be able to come in with two professionals who I really admire greatly, and being able to be part of that particular little micro team, and then teaming with the patients who are an invaluable part of the team, right? And so, we just started.
I love how you said about the MAs being, fiercely protective of their medical providers, and as we talk about regularly as well, fiercely protective of the community.
Absolutely.
So getting, I love that you highlighted this part of this conversation. Any of these innovations that we do, really thinking about the support staff, the teams that really make this go, and making sure that they're bought in to this.
Yeah.
What was it like? Because one of the things also that my mind really wants to highlight is it's not like you started out with a playbook. Like this was like, we're going to do it.
Yeah.
We're going to. What was that like? Like, how was that process?
It was like, I think I probably do that more in my life than not, So maybe that was just, that's how I go through life. But it's always daunting to do that too, because you're just like, you don't know what you're doing, so you're just doing something, and then you're reflecting afterwards, did that something work? Did that land? Did it not land? What do I need to do? And, after each clinic, Dr. Stedman and Alicia and I would just sit down and we would be like, okay, how'd it go? What worked well? What didn't work well? And there was a lot of like tinkering with stuff, right? In our system, for example, we started off with having just all the patients added to my schedule that day. But then patients would be alerted, like would get texts on their phone, you're seeing a BHC, and that would really stress them out because we're like, what? Why is this happening, right? So there'd be some preconceived notions there. So that was something we discontinued right away after we got some feedback from patients about how that was kind of startling to them, right? we played around with different ways of having, would I go before each visit? Would I go after each visit? Would there be, how would that look, right? We played around with communication. We use Teams to communicate in our organization, and so communicating with each other, the three of us. If I was going late, if Dr. Stedman was going late, if there was a problem with rooming a patient, but also not over communicating to bog the system down, right? So there was a lot of things we were just really working out at the beginning. And then myself, professionally, I was also, clinically, I was also working out how do I adjust my clinical practice with the goal of really keeping what I think of as the essential, like, beating heart of this practice, which is like the human connection and being present, right? I really kind of have probably like a transdiagnostic lens. I'm not super focused on like, okay, in this visit, I'm going to get the most accurate diagnosis. That's not what I'm there for. That's not what I'm about. My goal is to see the person for who they are and understand, one, what they want to have happen with their health, be it, physical or mental or spiritual or emotional or social, but two, understand that in the context of who they are. Like, that's the goal for me in the visit. And three, be able to facilitate whatever needs to happen with the medical provider, right? To like...
Can I pause you?
Yeah, for sure.
So, because it was going to be one of the questions I was going to ask you. No, this is perfect. It's a great segue of like, so what happens in these visits?
Yeah.
And I love how you said, and knowing you as a human, there's no way you would do something that felt gross or felt like you were doing like less care or something like that. So what have you found within these visits?
Well, one of the things about this is like, if you are truly seeing everybody or almost everybody, sometimes there's somebody who's already established with the BHC and they only want to see that person, or sometimes cost is a barrier and they're like, I just can't afford it, and that's fair too, right? But if you're moving that and you're really seeing everybody, you're seeing people who are coming in for a wide variety of reasons, many of which would never be flagged as a person who would need a BHC, right? And so part of what my role is, and many of these are people who've never seen a BHC before. Like they're like, I don't even know what you are about, right? So part of my role then is to have something useful for every single visit, regardless of regardless of what they're there for, right? And so the way that I introduce it to patients is like, here's what this is going to look like. First of all, I'm going to gather information from you that your doctor is critical to your doctor to understanding you and knowing you as a human, but they do not have time. Oftentimes I will go in before Dr. Stedman. We found that works better for the most part, especially with new patients. So then it just like normalizes that this is part of like, you're here, you're seeing Dr. Stedman, a new patient to you, a new doctor to you. Here's part of how she provides her care. You're going to meet me at least once. I'm going to get some information from you. And if we think that through this conversation it's helpful to like set some goals, we're going to do that as well, right? So there's always that information gathering component, right? Or at least there's always, if it's a patient is new to me, I should say, right? If it's a patient I've seen, and I'll come down to that in a second, because now there are patients who schedule with Dr. Stedman on the day that I'm there. So intentionally, right? Intentionally. So that's a little bit different. But if it's a new to me patient, then that's always one part of what I'm doing. And I really frame that as, this is information your doctor dearly wants to know about you, will help them take care of you better, but they don't have the time to ask it. But I do. And you're just going to be sitting here waiting anyway, so why not have this, right? So that's the first part. And then I'll say, and in the course of this, if it comes out that there's something that you have been wanting to work on or are working on, and I can support you in that, then that's what's going to happen, right? And sometimes people come to the doctor for XYZ reason, but something else is going on in their life, and it just works out that you get to talk about that today. We can do that too. So that's kind of how I shape it, and I have found that to be very beneficial.
Do you feel like that engineering at the beginning of shaping that, is that usually what is produced with?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yes. So most people like this idea of like, okay, like I'm seeing this doctor, I don't know this doctor, or maybe I've worked with this doctor before, but they haven't had a chance to get to know me in this other way, or I trust this doctor, and if this doctor thinks this is a good idea, I'll meet with you, right? Like, if this is what they're doing, I'll do it. And so then I'll do the contextual interview, but it's an abbreviated contextual interview. I think I have just over 9 years learned to abbreviate the contextual interview anyway. So it's not if you were watching me, I'm not kind of going through it like item by item. I'm gathering, I'm asking questions.
Is there any key points that you do try to always make sure that you get?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like I definitely want to know about what relationships are important to them and how they feel about those relationships. Do they feel supported? Do they feel distant, alienated, conflictual, right? So I want to know about that. I want to know how they spend their day and how they feel about how they spend their day. Do they feel like they're spending their day in a productive way? Do they feel like their wheels are spinning? You know, I want to have that understanding. I want to know their core values, you know? And I know this sounds like a little esoteric, but I want to get a sense of what they love and what they're scared of. You know? Like, I think those are like the key things that I'm trying to get out of it.
Awesome.
You know? And those are the things I'll like reflect back at the end. I'll be like, so here's a sense I'm getting from you. Am I hearing this right? You know, you're a person, you are so hardworking. This is a key part of of who you are. It's very important to you that you show up to work every day. And it's been stressful lately because of your health. And it sounds like your family is very important to you. And it sounds like you have some worries about your son is, you know, or whatever it is, right? Like that's a hypothetical. But I kind of really, at the end of it, I summarize. Am I hearing you correctly? Is this what's going on? And then I'll say, and it sounds like some of these things we talked about, sounds like you mentioned in here, like, you know, you're feeling low energy, and we've talked about some things there, right? And I'm curious, like, what are your thoughts about that, right? You've mentioned, you know, what your day looks like, and I can't help but wonder, like, what that looks like as far as, like, you know, what you're putting in your body to help you stay energized, or what sleep you're getting, those kind of things. But I don't just, like, ask, what's your diet look like? What's, you know what I mean? Unless
it seems like a natural
warranted.
progression that like just segues into these things, which also my mind predicts is the lineage of that would just naturally also lead to goals. Like setting goals, like, is this something we're working on? Do we want to work on this?
Absolutely. You know, and I've just found, I mean, I'm a big proponent of like, your first couple of years in any profession, you really do need to like sort of follow the rules, as it were. You really need to get the reps down so you know what you're doing. But then after that, you really need to improvise and give yourself permission to improvise so it's meaningful and enjoyable and connects to you, right?
That quote I don't know. We always say, right, like learn it, do it well, then become efficient, then innovate with it. So let me ask you this. So you kind of given this example. One of the things I was going to ask you about, one of the themes was just like, what has your experience been? What have you noticed the medical provider's experience been? But this is a natural segue to, what have you heard from patients? Like, what has patients' experience been like with this period?
Overwhelmingly, I have heard good things from patients, right? And I'll talk about the things that patients have said they don't like in a second, but you know, I've had patients who have never seen a BHC, but then have given feedback to Dr. Stedman or myself of like, I'm so glad you did this. I think you should do this for everybody. I would never have talked with somebody, but it was really good that I did, you know. I think by normalizing it, by patients knowing every single person who Dr. Stedman sees today is going to be seeing me, that just removes this presumption that there's something wrong. You know?
That they were in trouble.
That they're in trouble, that the doctor thinks they're crazy, that they're non-compliant, that they're a problem. It's just totally removed, right? I've had patients say this really helps them, especially new patients, right? Say this really helps them have some trust that Dr. Stedman cares about them as a person. And I've also heard people say that when I, you know, paired with Dr. Hampton too, that like this helps them know that Dr. Hampton prioritizes them as a person. And you know, both are beloved providers.
How cool is that?
But that's kind of the piece that I've heard a lot. You know, I've had people who I'll give an example of a patient who, there's really no circumstance given their presentation, nobody would think, oh, a BHC is appropriate. She was coming in, she just needed a referral for a specialist for her eyes, and it was just kind of this like, my insurance needs me to see my primary care.
Check this box.
Check this box, right. But because I was pairing that day, and because I was going in ahead of time, right, this particular patient, we got to be talking, and this patient was, I'm so glad you came in today. A family member has tried to commit suicide. I was not going to share this with anybody. I've worked with therapists in the past before. It was not helpful. But talking, you know, this just feels like a very normal place to talk about some of these things, you know? And I think that does come back to this idea of like, we're just humans here.
Correct.
Having a human experience, and I'm here to like help facilitate whatever you need to have facilitated.
I
you know?
love that so much.
So that's kind of some of the feedback that I've gotten.
Because again, especially that last patient experience, right? A couple different things that like are highlighted within this. One, so regularly, just within our culture and our context, there's a way therapy is going to look and going to feel, right? And for some people that is really great, right?
Absolutely.
That's
100%.
really great.
Some people really seek that out. That's really helpful. I'm not dissing that.
Correct. And then in this other way, and I go back to, we've had this guy on our podcast before, Jeff Young, who talks about people being like therapy lovers and therapy haters. And there's just a lot of people within our community that just for a variety of different contextual reasons just aren't going to be bought in necessarily to this traditional way of doing therapy. And think about that moment, as you said, with that patient, what a life event they are going through. To be able to be there and to have it be normalized, that it's like, oh, this could be a conversation that we can discuss. I also love, Sarah, and I never would have thought of this, is why I love these conversations with you, about patients saying, what this reflects about the medical provider being so intentional to care for them. Like this is like, almost, obviously this is what being said, but it's like, wow, I must be really important for the medical provider to be like, hey, I'm bringing in a team member constantly with it. That's cool. That's really, really cool. What has been the opposite? What has been the ones that...
some of the opposite is if somebody really loves the BHC, they're like, I don't know why I'm dealing with you.
Like, no doubt.
I have I have Dr. Bauman, I have whoever, like, I don't think so. So that's been it sometimes. Sometimes, like, I do my hardest to make sure that we're transparent about what the fee is going to be, if there is going to be one. But there has been times where I will look to see, and I think that I will understand it, but I'll be wrong, and I'll say it, and then they'll get a bill. So that's kind of, those have been the two big pieces. And I actually have several patients who are like, can you just come and talk to me for 11 minutes?
100%.
For 11 minutes, but like, I can't afford this, and
which is
a heartbreaking part of our system.
It's an absolute heartbreak, and we're fortunate, thankfully, being in a FQHC that we probably don't run into it as much as other places do. Still run into it a great deal. So let me ask you, a couple final wrapping up. This is Sarah. This has been great. I just want to make sure we're still from medical, let's say medical providers and medical staff perspective. What have you heard from them? What has this been like?
What I've heard from them, the two people I've done this the most intensely with, Dr. Stedman and Dr. Hampton. Dr. Stedman has said that this has, and I don't want to steal her words or anything, but she said that this has been really helpful in kind of her feeling very supported in the clinic, and just maybe revitalizing some of her love of the patient care part of it. What Dr. Hampton has shared with me that he finds the most valuable, I'm going to butcher his words right now. He put it in a particular way I really loved, but he said that for him, going into family medicine was because he wanted to have this connection with patients. The way family medicine oftentimes is run, there's not enough time for that, and this allows him to know his patients, and so this gives him the context he's not allowed by time constraints to get. So he feels like this allows him to know his patients deeply, connect to them deeply, understand them, and then that in turn informs his way of approaching the care.
And that's a big one that I know you've shared and other people have shared, that he's conveyed, that getting this information, because he's a great provider. He's fantastic. And he will incorporate all the information that he has. It's just the problem, if you don't have that information,
you can't.
That it's going to change what you do.
Right, exactly. So I think those have been from the medical providers, like the feedback that I got, that there's the sense of like camaraderie, you're in it together with a person, and that person has a different level of licensure than you, but somebody who you can trust their insight and their knowledge. You're feeling a little bit less alone, and the medical system can feel lonely at times. You're carrying a lot of weight if you're a provider, right?
Especially for providers.
Especially for providers, right?
Yes.
From the staff, what I have heard, from the support staff, what I have heard is that it's very fun sometimes to have a BHC. Like, it can be like a fun little triad that you're doing, that they like knowing the patients are getting this extra level of care. It's a little bit more work for the MA, so if they're giving you that feedback, that's pretty valuable, right?
Huge. Yes.
And I think it really also speaks to like how important it is to recognize and honor and attend to them as well.
Recognize, honor, and attend to them.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
For you, how burned out are you doing it? I'm kidding.
I would say it's the exact opposite, honestly. Yes. Like, I think this has, I did not, when Dr. Stedman and I kind of were talking about this, I wouldn't say that I was burnt out, but I would say I was a little bit like, okay, I've done this, and will I be doing this forever? Maybe I'll get bored. Will I go do something else? Just as a restless spirit, right? Feeling like I'd reached a certain place of accomplishment, and I was like, well, okay. This has really changed it for me, I will have to say. And I think a big part of that is, one, some of the things that can lead to burnout are removed for me, right? So I'm not in a clinic getting like a bazillion different things and like a lot of like communication about who's going to get a warm handoff, like all of that, which can be a little bit.
Because you're just focused on the provider.
I'm just focused on the provider and those patients. And so I find that to be a nice thing, you get this like relationship with the provider you're working with the patients you're working with. It's really beautiful, I think, You get this opportunity to meet people at a time you would never otherwise meet them. There's no other circumstance in which you would meet these people, right? And yet you get to meet them, and oftentimes it is a really pivotal thing, right? And I think my experiences from that have been so rewarding to me. So, and I like that the challenge of working at this level has meant that I've had to develop some efficiencies, and I think that's been good for me.
Damn right.
So, yeah.
And I love always going back, just knowing how much of a value congruent human you are. This seems like a behavior that is a value congruent.
It feels very value congruent.
To be able to be there,
yeah.
meeting people from our community that would not have access, or wouldn't think or be identified.
It just wouldn't be it wouldn't have been a normal thing. Like there would be no reason for somebody in a busy day to say like, oh, this person should, get a BHC. Which is the other thing. I think if we normalize this, it also reduces a scarcity model around BHCs, like a scarcity mindset, right?
Yes.
Which I think is really invaluable.
So last two questions. The first one being, so say someone's watching this, and my mind predicts, similar to what people when they came to your presentation last year at CFHA, probably felt it's like, hey, this would be cool. Like this would be cool. What would be just different things that you would highlight, like, hey, make sure these contingencies are here. If you're thinking about doing this, what would be some words of advice at the beginning?
I would say at the beginning, I think like the fit between the two providers, the BHC and the medical provider, is pretty important.
Okay. So the relationship.
The relationship fit is pretty important. I think it's, if you have two people and there's not good work chemistry between them, it's not going to go
Don't have that be your first one to go through. Okay.
So I think that would be a very important thing. I think secondly, as the BHC, shifting from this idea that you have to be rigid about how I'm going to do a contextual interview. I'm going to come up with like a SMART goal for every single person. Correct. Like, I think being a little bit more flexible with this and just ask yourself, like, how can I be helpful? How can I be helpful? And then it kind of flows from there, right? And the mindset that I go into is like, if 80% of my visits, so sometimes you do a visit, it's 11 minutes, it's not billable, but it's still helpful, right? So if 100% of my visits are helpful and 80% of my visits are billable, I'm still making a lot of money. Oh, does that make sense?
100%.
Like I'm meeting my financial responsibilities to the organization, So don't freak out if in this model some of these are not going to be billable.
And can I pause on that too? Because I think that's a great thing across the board, where it's like really allowing moments to be the defining thing about was this helpful or not. Not how many minutes and so forth. And because that is such a big thing where finances are important.
Of course they are.
We should be more honest about that. We should be more real about that. The ironic thing a lot of times is that if we still just allow the moment to determine, it works out.
Absolutely. And it works out in all sorts of different ways, right? Like it works out, I'm thinking about a patient who cannot afford the copay, right? So I will go in and chat with this patient, and I am very mindful, 11 to 14 minutes, and I keep it to that, and this patient's aware of that. But in that, we're able to kind of do some gentle reinforcement of some health behaviors that honestly help him stay out of the hospital.
What are we talking about, right?
So there's like a bigger financial thing going on, even if, that's not a billable moment. And there's just a bigger healthcare thing. And he knows I care about him, and he knows I'm making time for him, and he knows that's reflective of Dr. Stedman's care for him.
It's a good human thing. We were even hearing this morning about on our CMO call about, hey, the quality metrics, like we're in the top 20% of all the health centers about quality metrics. And it's like, it's hard for me to think that 11 to 14 minute visit isn't contributing to those quality metrics.
And I think if you keep the mindset, like I talk sometimes about guardrails, right?
Yes.
It's helpful to think of guardrails as guardrails, but not the thing, right? So the thing is, be helpful.
Yes.
Right?
And
the guardrails are, if you're being helpful, but all of your visits are 11 minutes, that's a bad. You're
Correct.
not.
You're not
great,
yeah,
right?
100%. I love that.
So like set your guardrails.
Well said.
You know? Yeah.
Last question for you. Where do you see this ending? Like, what do you, is this like a new vision of care? Like,
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I think so. I mean, there's always these like other questions outside of the realm of like what, health insurances will pay for or other things like that. But I do. I think this is so, I think that it does so many stabilizing things to a patient's health, to a community's health, to the health of a healthcare system, and to the individuals who are engaged in it, that I do think so, But I know it's daunting, and I understand that it's like, if you're a BHC and you're like, oh my God, like
For
now,
sure.
like I understand that, right? And I know there are people, maybe I'm a little reactive to this, but there are people who think like, well, can you really provide care in 20 minutes? Or like, is that really deep? Or, is that meaningful? Or are you addressing trauma? And obviously I wouldn't do it if I didn't think the answer to that was yes. But I recognize you have to get into a certain practice to be able to do that.
It's one of those things that I know we've talked about this, like how much of these things can we talk about and teach versus like, you got to experience it.
You kind of do just have to experience it and sit with the discomfort of it a bit.
Yes.
But and also you have to do that with anything anyway.
Amen.
And also I just really do see this as such a stabilizing thing. And ultimately for BHCs, I could be wrong about this, but I think the providers who work with me in this way have better trust and buy-in for BHCs across the board.
No question.
Because there is that sense of like, I'm in the trenches with them.
Absolutely.
Right?
That you want to be there.
Yeah.
That there's, again, that I'm approaching from a stance of humility, seeing, we're seeing them within their context. Be like, I want to be a part of that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm in their context with them. I'm not outside of it being like, do this differently.
I like that. Yeah, because that's usually what we're doing, right? Like, do this differently. I lied. I have one more question. So you've been doing this now?
Almost 3 years.
That's what I was going to say,
almost
right?
3 years.
Are you surprised now? How many people do we have? We have you,
Lacey, Martine, Ryan. I know Emilio is interested in it. I'm sorry.
Brenna's going to start.
In it. Yeah.
Are you surprised about how much it has rippled to other BHCs? It's probably not a surprise about the medical. I can see medical wise be like, hell yes, sign me up, right? For sure. Maybe some, maybe not, but I can see a lot. Are you surprised about the BHCs, how much this has rippled out?
Yeah, I think I am a little bit surprised. I think at first when I started, I was like, this is the coolest thing. Everybody should do it. And then there was like,
no doubt.
That's crazy. And I was like, oh. But, so then I had to, adjust my expectations to be aligned with reality. But, at this point, I am surprised. And I love it. I really love it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go. Yeah. Let's go. Well, Sarah, I appreciate it. Might have you back on to talk about some of these other things. Obviously, if you're watching this, reach out with questions, thoughts, comments. I'm sure this should, or I would hope, this would bring up a lot of different places people's minds go, because that means people are thinking and challenging kind of assumptions in a lot of ways. So definitely let us know where your minds go, and appreciate you for stopping by.
Thank you.